The relationship between the United States and China is the defining geopolitical challenge of the 21st century. This complex and multifaceted relationship has far-reaching implications for global stability and prosperity. Both nations are nuclear-armed superpowers with global economic and military reach. Their military capabilities are unmatched, and their economic influence extends to every corner of the globe. In recent years, tensions have escalated over trade disputes, technological competition, and China's growing assertiveness in the Indo-Pacific region. The trade war has seen tariffs and counter-tariffs impacting businesses and consumers worldwide. The South China Sea, Taiwan, and the Korean Peninsula have become flashpoints for potential conflict. China's territorial claims and military activities in these areas have raised alarms among its neighbors and the international community. Miscalculations or accidents could quickly spiral out of control, leading to a devastating war between these two giants. The potential for an unintended escalation is a constant concern for policymakers and military leaders. The stakes could not be higher, not just for the US and China, but for the entire world. A conflict between these two powers would have profound implications for global peace and security. The global economy is deeply intertwined with both countries. The US and China are major trading partners for many nations, and any disruption in their relationship would have ripple effects across the globe. A war would have catastrophic consequences for international trade, supply chains, and financial markets. The interconnected nature of the global economy means that no country would be immune from the fallout. The specter of nuclear escalation would hang over any conflict, threatening the very survival of humanity. The use of nuclear weapons would have devastating and long-lasting effects on the planet. While both sides recognize the dangers of war, the risk of miscalculation remains high. Diplomatic efforts are crucial in preventing misunderstandings and maintaining open lines of communication. The world watches with bated breath, hoping that diplomacy and restraint will prevail. The international community has a vested interest in encouraging dialogue and cooperation between the US and China to ensure a peaceful resolution to their differences.
In a hypothetical conflict between the US and China, the first shots would likely be fired in cyberspace. China possesses sophisticated cyber capabilities, and a surprise attack on critical US infrastructure could sow chaos and cripple the American response. Power grids, communication networks, and financial institutions could be targeted, plunging the country into darkness, disrupting military coordination, and causing widespread panic. Hospitals and emergency services could be overwhelmed, further exacerbating the chaos. Simultaneously, Chinese cyber forces might attempt to blind US intelligence gathering and early warning systems. This would give them a crucial advantage in the early stages of the conflict, masking their troop movements and military deployments. The opening hours of a US-China war would be characterized by confusion, fear, and uncertainty as the United States grapples with the scale and sophistication of the initial cyber onslaught. The ability of the US government to effectively communicate with its citizens and reassure the public would be severely tested.
Following the initial cyber strikes, China might launch a barrage of ballistic and cruise missiles targeting US military bases in the Pacific, aiming to neutralize key strategic points and weaken the US military presence in the region. This would include bases in Japan, South Korea, and Guam, which are critical for the US's operational capabilities in the Asia-Pacific theater. These attacks would be meticulously planned to cripple US air and naval power in the region, giving China a decisive advantage in the early stages of the conflict. By targeting runways, hangars, and naval docks, China aims to ground aircraft and immobilize ships, effectively reducing the US's ability to project power. Chinese missiles could also target key logistical hubs and supply lines, disrupting the flow of reinforcements and supplies to US forces. This would include targeting transportation networks, communication lines, and storage facilities, creating a logistical nightmare for the US military. Airfields, ports, and fuel depots would be high-priority targets, hindering the US's ability to sustain a prolonged fight. By cutting off fuel supplies and damaging critical infrastructure, China would aim to limit the operational endurance of U.S. forces. China might also attempt to use its anti-ship ballistic missiles, such as the DF-21D, to target U.S. aircraft carriers operating in the Pacific. These carriers are the cornerstone of U.S. naval power, and their destruction would be a significant blow to U.S. military capabilities. These weapons, while untested in combat, could pose a significant threat to the U.S. Navy's most powerful assets. The DF-21D, often referred to as the carrier killer, is designed to strike moving targets at sea with high precision, potentially altering the balance of naval power in the region. The initial wave of missile attacks would be a defining moment in the conflict, testing the resilience of U.S. defenses and its ability to absorb and respond to a massive assault. The effectiveness of U.S. missile defense systems, such as the Aegis and THAAD, would be put to the ultimate test, determining the course of the conflict in its critical early stages. U.S. military personnel would need to respond swiftly to these attacks, implementing countermeasures and launching retaliatory strikes to mitigate the damage and regain control of the situation. The speed and efficiency of their response could be crucial in preventing further escalation and maintaining a strategic balance. Additionally, the U.S. would likely coordinate with its international allies to formulate a comprehensive strategic response, leveraging the combined military capabilities of allied nations to counter China's aggressive actions. This collaboration would be essential in presenting a united front and deterring further aggression. Diplomatic efforts would also play a critical role in de-escalating the conflict, with negotiations and back-channel communications aimed at preventing a full-scale war. The international community would be closely watching, hoping for a resolution that avoids widespread devastation and maintains regional stability.
Faced with a two-pronged assault, the United States would be forced to respond quickly and decisively. The nature of the threat would demand an immediate and multifaceted approach, combining both traditional military tactics and modern cyber warfare strategies. The initial focus would be on restoring critical infrastructure and shoring up cyber defenses to prevent further attacks. This would involve mobilizing specialized cyber units to identify and neutralize threats, ensuring that essential services such as power grids, communication networks, and financial systems remain operational. Simultaneously, the U.S. military would launch counterstrikes against Chinese military targets. These counterstrikes would be meticulously planned to minimize collateral damage while maximizing the impact on the adversary's military capabilities. U.S. submarines and stealth bombers would target Chinese missile launchers, air bases, and naval bases, aiming to degrade China's ability to project power. The use of advanced stealth technology would be crucial in penetrating enemy defenses and delivering precision strikes. Cyber counterattacks would be launched against Chinese command and control systems, attempting to disrupt their military operations. These cyber offensives would aim to create confusion and disarray within the Chinese military hierarchy, hampering their ability to coordinate and execute further attacks. The U.S. would also likely activate its missile defense systems, including the Aegis combat system and the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, or THAAD system, to intercept incoming Chinese missiles. These systems are designed to detect, track, and neutralize ballistic missile threats, providing a critical layer of defense. However, the effectiveness of these systems against a saturation attack is uncertain. A saturation attack involves overwhelming the defense systems with a large number of missiles, potentially exceeding their capacity to intercept all incoming threats. The U.S. response would be carefully calibrated to avoid further escalation while demonstrating resolve and deterring further aggression. This delicate balance would require precise coordination between military and diplomatic channels to ensure that actions taken do not inadvertently provoke a larger conflict. The goal would be to restore a semblance of stability while seeking a diplomatic solution to the crisis. Diplomatic efforts would focus on de-escalating tensions, engaging with international allies, and pursuing negotiations to reach a peaceful resolution. The overarching aim would be to prevent further loss of life and maintain global stability.
Recognizing that a war between the US and China would have global ramifications, American allies would rally to their support. Japan, South Korea, Australia, and the United Kingdom, bound by treaty obligations and shared security concerns, would be among the first to provide military assistance. Japan, with its advanced air and naval capabilities, could play a crucial role in defending sea lanes and providing logistical support to U.S. forces. South Korea, facing the threat of North Korean involvement, would likely reinforce its border and provide intelligence sharing. NATO, while not obligated to intervene directly, might increase its military presence in the Indo-Pacific region as a show of solidarity and deterrence. European allies could also provide economic and diplomatic support, imposing sanctions on China and working to isolate it on the world stage. The involvement of U.S. allies would transform the conflict from a bilateral confrontation into a broader geopolitical struggle, raising the stakes for all involved. In the digital age, warfare is no longer confined to the battlefield. Both the U.S. and China would wage intense information warfare campaigns, seeking to shape the narrative, sow discord among their adversaries, and win international support. State-sponsored media outlets, social media platforms, and covert influence operations would be used to spread disinformation, propaganda, and fake news. Each side would accuse the other of atrocities, war crimes, and violations of international law, seeking to demonize the enemy and erode their legitimacy. The fog of war, already thick with uncertainty and confusion, would be further obscured by a deluge of misinformation and propaganda. Distinguishing truth from falsehood would be incredibly difficult, making it challenging for policymakers, journalists, and the public to make informed decisions. The information war could prove just as decisive as the kinetic conflict, shaping public opinion, influencing international alliances, and potentially prolonging or even escalating the war.